This is a great honor. We've had prizes coming from the United States, but this is the first time we are being recognized in a global award from a European country. We've received support from Europe before, but getting it from Spain is something extraordinary. This will give us more recognition and more strength to talk about improving learning outcomes in schools. We've learned through the history of the past 300-400 years, especially since the Industrial Revolution, that development depends upon productivity of societies, and a country that is uneducated, unskilled, cannot be highly productive, and it cannot bring itself out of poverty. So in a general sense, education is definitely important for development, but more so in today's world when there is an uneven development, when a large population lags behind others who come from developed countries or who have access to knowledge and the more affluent economy, they need to catch up, and that they can do only if they receive a good education. They get a platform from which they can rise to learn more and earn more. So education is definitely important for development. I can't say that Pratham has really changed the traditional way that reading, writing and math is taught in India as yet. What we have done is we've innovated a new way of teaching reading in schools or outside the schools. We are experimenting with large-scale teaching of numeracy and math. Now what we've done, I think, is for the first time since about 2002, we have introduced the idea in India that reading should be taught as a separate skill. In the developing world, largely reading is not taught as a separate reading skill. The curriculum talks about language but not reading specifically, and this is a gap. In the developed world, especially in the West, what we find is children are taught how to read. There's learning to read, there's reading to learn. Now this, we have now developed a technique, indigenous technique, with the understanding of our own language, with our own script, and combining what is known also in the West, so that reading can be taught very efficiently. And we find that when we combine the indigenous knowledge, our scripts, our phonetic charts, with some ideas about how to help children to learn to read from the modern times, we find that the children learn to read very quickly. I think I could summarize what we've learned in 3 words. One is focus, second is scale, and the third is simplicity. By focus, I mean in a sector like education, of course we need holistic development. The child must get an opportunity to develop all round, and not just in reading, writing, arithmetic. But unless you focus on something that is measurable and try to attain that to the fullest, you cannot actually achieve a good measure of success, which actually builds more success. We know that if we can focus on small steps to succeed, then with every small success you build the motivation and the energy for the next successful step. So I think focus is extremely important, and planning to achieve goals in small steps is really important for us. The second one is scale. You can work on a small scale and show big achievements, but that rarely is useful. When time comes to scale up an innovation that's been experimented on a small scale, then in a country like India, you come across barriers and hurdles of human resources, financial resources, technical resources, and so on. And then the scaling up is not possible. But if you start by working on a large scale, then your model actually takes into consideration all the hurdles that you're going to face, and when that model is developed to deal with those hurdles and obstacles, then it's a robust model that can go to further scale and become useful. Also, when we work with scale, what we find is that young people with a lot of potential who otherwise would not get an opportunity come forward and start taking responsibilities, and building that human resource is extremely important for development and education. This neglected resource, when it becomes productive, then much more can be achieved. And finally, simplicity. In an underdeveloped country where human resources are poor, when people's understanding of complicated words, sentences and paragraphs is limited, it is important to simplify. For example, our motto is every child in school and learning well. Now that's a very simple sentence to understand. Then we break down the learning to say children, all children should be able to read fluently by the time they finish 5th grade. That's easy to understand. So if you do set goals, simple goals, focus, and in small steps try to achieve on a large scale, then that works the best. What does not work is when you go the other way. If you try to talk in complex sentences and try to talk about complexity and how difficult things are, nothing is achieved. If you don't have focus and you try to do everything, it doesn't work. And if you work on small scale and then try to scale it up, your innovation and experiment doesn't work. I don't think Pratham's model has been exported. We are not in the export-import business. We don't import things. We learn from others and we grow our own. And we'd like to do that for other countries as well. What has been picked up by other countries or people in other countries is our method of assessment, evaluation of learning achievements in a household survey. We do the annual status of education report in India. Every year, about 30,000 volunteers visit close to 16,000 villages all across India, and we survey, test close to 450,000 children, interview about 330,000 households, families, and that's a huge survey. And every year, at the end of every year, we arrive at conclusions about how many children are attending, and what is the status of the schools, and how many children can read, write and do basic arithmetic. Now this has been picked up by some friends in Pakistan. They felt that what was applicable to India could be done in Pakistan as well, and Asar Pakistan, Asar, A-S-E-R, we call it Asar. The pronunciation is Asar, which means impact in Hindi, Hindustani and Urdu. So Asar has been replicated in Pakistan as well. In some African countries, Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, and I think Mali, Senegal, the annual status of education report methodology has been replicated, but to suit the local conditions. The model has been that we have greeted, invited, hosted people from all these countries who are interested in what we do. We've shown them what we do, we explained what we do, and then encourage them to create their own models for their own countries. Our Read India program runs at two levels. One is at the village level, where we work directly with village schools and children. So typically every year over the last 2-3 years, we've been working with about 1 million children, rural children every year. And that means that we work with children who know barely alphabets or can not even recognize alphabets. When we do this with learning camps, we know that about 60% children become good readers or very fluent readers. So I'd say that every year we impact the reading levels of close to 500,000 children. Now, apart from that, what we aspire to do is to work with state governments so that we can work on a massive scale with the state government, with the school teachers and so on. We did this way back in 2005, 6, 7 with several state governments, and we found that the learning levels in the state, across the state, improved by 10, 15, 20 percentage points in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh and Punjab. However, later on, due to neglect, this was not sustained, and we did not work or could not work with the state governments. And this goes on happening. Sometimes the state governments want to work with us and sometimes they don't. But we are hopeful now that the Indian government and various state governments have now decided that they are going to focus on learning outcomes of reading and basic math, and we expect that we'll be able to once again impact the reading levels and math levels of children on a very large scale. We are also conducting some randomized controlled trials and large scale programs with the help of USAID and so on, where it is clear that about 70-75% at the end of the learning camp cycle learn to read.